Among the objects from Sierra Leone that we find in museums are carved wooden figures, usually female, though occasionally there are male figures, but the great majority are female. They show a mature adult woman in the prime of life. So, for example, with this figure here, we see a woman with healthy breasts which would give milk to children. She is slender, she has a slender neck, her hair is beautifully dressed in the way that Mende and Sherbro women were in the closing years of the 19th century. So this, with its scarification body decoration on the back of the figure, is very typical of figures from Sierra Leone. You will see that the carving of the head, with the high forehead, the small dainty features, the dressing of the hair, and the rings of the neck resembles the carving of Sowe masks. Only in the case of the figure, because it's able to give a realistic representation, some centered ears, it's the slenderness of the neck and the length and the clarity of the neck that's emphasized. The neck rings on the masks, of course, have to be much broader so that the helmet mask can fit over the head, and thus gives rise to the mistaken belief that the Mende prize rings of fat on the necks of women. But that is not the case. Now, these figures from Sierra Leone are carved very widely over the south, the east and the north of Sierra Leone, and they have very different functions and roles. Some, those from the south, are typically guardian figures, guardian spirits of a society, like the Sande Society, or the Yassi Society among the Sherbo or Bullum. Others which come from the north are more commonly twin figures, which are carved to represent a twin who has died, and there are particular beliefs associated with the existence of twins in the north, which was responsible for the creation of these figures. So if all we have is the figure itself, carved in the distinctive way that the figures tend to be carved from Sierra Leone, but we don't know anything about the circumstances of its collection, then we can probably not say anything with confidence about the use to which these figures have been put. One of the earliest collectors of figures from Sierra Leone was a man called T.J. Aldridge, who was a commercial agent in coastal Sierra Leone in the 1870s, 1880s, and who then made journeys into the interior to negotiate with chiefs. And he documented a particular use of female figures by the Yassi Society, a curative and protection society among the Sherbo or Bullum. And he gave the name Minsere to these figures. Now, Minsere is simply the plural of the Timni word for spirit, which is Min. So Minsere simply means the spirits. But those who collected after him, or museum curators, having only Aldridge's evidence to go on, tended to lump all of these carved wooden figures together as one sort, and to refer to them therefore as Minsere figures, and to say they were used by the Yassi Society for divination. In fact, since the Yassi Society is relatively restricted in its spread, even in its Mende form, Jaye, it's probably more likely that many of the figures which have been collected, which are in museums, are to be associated with the Sande Society or Bondo Society. This tall figure here is a very striking example of a figure which is probably associated with the Sandy Society. There are a number of figures carved almost certainly by the same artist or in the same workshop, which date from the early years of the 20th century. You see the very careful carving of the hair, the eyes represented by glass or mirror, a curious little hole at the side of the mouth which makes the figure look as if it once had been smoking a cigar or a cigarette. It might have been a pipe because there are photographs of men and women smoking pipes, chiefs smoking pipes at that period. The body decoration very clear there at the front and also at the back, the emphasis on the rear and the buttocks and on the breast. And what sometimes is a curious feature, or seems so to outsiders, what look to be European boots. Now, it may be this simply is a sign of status, that in the same way that European hats were worn by chiefs as signs of status, maybe that the wearing of European footwear was a sign of status as well. The other alternative explanation might be that the Sandy masker, the Indole Joe, often to conceal her feet, wears European boots or shoes. And so this may be a way of linking the guardian spirit of the society to the society masker. In the case of this smaller figure, we can say something more about its probable use and significance. I mentioned the Yase or Njaye society, a protective or curative society, in particular curing people who have been exposed to the medicine of the society and who have become deranged or maddened as a result. The Yase or Njaye society has male and female members, unlike, for example, the Sandy Society or the Bondo, which has exclusively female personnel. This particular figure, which came to the British Museum from the Wellcome collection, was one of a pair. This is the female of the pair, and the male of the pair has now been dispersed. We don't know in which museum, to which museum it was sent, so we're still trying to trace its male counterpart. The fact that it's a member of a male-female pair suggests that this particular figure, with its kind of rosette in the hair, with its sebe, the charms, little animal horns with charms at the throat, with its very distinctive representation of the navel or almost umbilical hernia, that this was used as a representation of the female spirit of the Yase or the Njaye society, although its male partner is now lost, or at least cannot currently be traced. The carved wooden figures from Sierra Leone vary a great deal in size. Some are very small, only a few centimetres tall. These two figures here are an example of larger figures. They are roughly a metre tall, and they're quite heavy in the wood in which they're carved. You will see this particular example, which was collected and brought to the museum, British Museum, in 1911. It has certain distinctive features which have enabled other collectors to link it to figures which were collected later and which exist in different museums and collections. It has this rather broad face, slightly angular nose, with the two eyes rather close together with eyebrows, hair drawn back, and a very distinctive feature, huge disc-like ears, really out of all proportion to normal naturalistic size. As you go down, you find the cut or ringed neck. These beads are part of the decoration of the figure. The ones in the centre seem to be made from a kind of nut or kernel. The hands supporting the breasts, the scarification marks ornamenting the stomach and the belly. And then as you proceed down the figure, you find that this again is a figure which is wearing boots, which people have speculated might be intended for comic effect, but seems more to be a representation of the dignity of the figure that it's wearing. It's wearing boots. As I say, there are a number of figures of this type of different sizes, which look as if they came from the workshop of a particular artist, or a particular artist and his apprentices. This figure alongside it, if you didn't know anything about its background, you would assume that it came from the east or south of the country, that it was a Mende figure, and that it was to be associated therefore with the Sangha Society, or possibly the Yasi or Jayet Society. However, we know something about the circumstances of its collection. It's one of the earliest Sierra Leone figures to have entered the British Museum collection. It was originally offered to the museum in 1897, so it's been in the museum since 1897. But it was collected by Captain Williams, who made a journey into the interior of Sierra Leone in 1892. And he collected it in a Timni chiefdom to the north of Sierra Leone, well away from the Mende area, in a Timni chiefdom called Tinkatupa. So the circumstances of its manufacture, the circumstances of its collection, are quite different from most of the female figures in the British Museum's collection, and indeed from the other figures that have come from the south and east of the country. This is clearly a Timni figure, and yet its physical features are very similar, with the ringed neck, with the decoration of the head, with the hands held up towards the breasts, and indeed, although it's not very clear from this figure was also wearing some kind of footwear or boots. The base of this figure is not original, it's a European, so it's standing on a base which was made in this country.